Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Geeks and Noobs. Normally, I'd have a huge spiel, tell you to follow, like, you know the works. Follow, like, subscribe. Please, if you're on Twitch, hit that follow button, hit the subscribe button, do the Prime subscription, make Jeffrey Bezos pay for it. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, please like it, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. That being said, holy shit. We're talking Moon Knight episode 5, and hang on a second. I gotta. All right, Doctor, so it all started, I guess, when I was around 9. And my mom was really mean to me, and holy shit. Like, seriously, like, this episode, my god. We're not gonna try to go spoiler free for the first half and then go to spoilers. We're just gonna jump right into it. There's no getting around it. This
Yeah.
episode is all over the place. But holy crap. By the way, with me is Kel, coming back to help me finish up the Moon Knight we got this week and next week. I don't even know what to expect next week, and we'll try and talk about that at the end. But I don't know. Kel, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic today, Vince. Thanks for having me back once again to talk about this amazing, totally what the fuck series.
Yeah. So the reason the title of this, the Geeks and Noobs episode 19 is called "What the Fuck Just Happened," because what the fuck just happened? What just happened? Holy shit! It doesn't make any sense, but it makes a ton of sense. Now, I did want to mention something right off the top. Marvel is starting to fall into a bit of a trope with their Disney series, where episode 5 ends up being a flashback episode before the climactic finale. However, in this particular case, it works a ton. Like, it's perfect. Because not only was it not just a flashback episode, but it was still furthering the story in a way, and also still keeping everybody on their toes. And I've seen some big time creators on TikTok and on YouTube who I respect have talked about how they didn't really feel this episode. They felt very uncomfortable and it was confusing. I'm like, well, that's the fucking point. If it was a nice flow and it was nice and easy, you wouldn't understand Mark's place in the world. You were meant to feel uncomfortable because Mark feels uncomfortable. So I think that people need to, yes, all art is subjective, but maybe don't overthink it, or maybe don't underthink it. Like, maybe realize that you're not as smart as you think you are, or that it's just not, maybe it's just not for you. But the reality is, you're meant, if you're not capable of handling feeling uncomfortable from a series, maybe go back to watching popcorn blockbusters and not deeper stuff, which is what Marvel is getting into. Because I promise you, like, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is probably going to be uncomfortable for a majority of that film. I also want to compare this back to WandaVision episode 5, where Agatha walked Wanda through her memories. So these two episodes they parallel very well. Except for the fact in this one, in Moon Knight, we honestly have no idea if he's in a psych ward or if he's actually in the Egyptian afterlife. We have no idea. I understand how the episode ended, but we still don't know, because of the way the episode jumped around. You honestly don't know. And there was so many people after episode 4, oh, how can they ruin the whole psych ward part when they already told you it's not the psych ward with the introduction of Tumaret? Well, if you have some patience, you will see that this is still very unclear. But again, in parallels, I think the parallel is important, the fact that we have these episodes where we trace the trauma of the character to getting them to where they are now. And I think the main reason is both of these characters are based sort of in magic and in sorcery, which is where Marvel's moving a little bit away from science and more to the mystical and metaphysical side of things. So the fact that WandaVision episode 5 and Moon Knight episode 5 have a lot of parallels, I think, is very, very important. So Kel, anybody who follows him on TikTok might have seen his in-car reaction video. If you didn't, go check it out. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I don't even know, because one, this episode was I didn't know what to expect with episode 5, but I wasn't expecting any of this.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I mean, I'm glad that we got it. So we did get a little more backstory on Mark, who has been very mysterious throughout the show, even though he's the main character. But we've seen more through the eyes of Steven than we have Mark. But now we got introduced to his childhood and things that happened to lead that led him to have the ID. And it's not too far off from the comics. There are a few details that were changed, but I think this works a lot better
Oh yeah, yeah,
for
for sure.
the show. I mean, the comic version was good, but I really think this version is so much better.
I agree. I do appreciate this version a lot better. And I know I said episode 5 of WandaVision, but now that I think back, it might have been episode 8, whatever the flashback episode was, because it was actually a longer series then.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a bit of a trope now to have the flashback episode. Um, but it's important, especially in a character like this, because at least with Scarlet Witch, you had some idea of her backstory in the MCU. This
Yeah.
character, we obviously had none. So I did go into this episode definitely expecting flashbacks, definitely expecting an exploration of who Mark Spector really is. Um, that being said, like holy shit, like the jumping, the like it's like, oh, he's definitely in the afterlife, and then suddenly he's back in the office with Dr. Harlow, and they're sedating him and all this stuff, and then okay, so maybe he's actually in a psych ward, and it is all in his head. Like you never really know. And like I said, even at the end of that of the show, you have no idea what's going on.
Mhm.
Um, However, we did get to see the kind of, for lack of a better term, birth of Stephen Grant, of Mark's other identity, which was hard for Stephen to deal with because he didn't realize that he's not the primary. And that was rough for him. But we saw
Yeah.
why. It's based around a tragedy at a young age with a younger brother. They were in a cave, it started to rain, and unfortunately his brother drowned. Even though he was like, hey, mom said not to go play in the rain, we should probably head back. It's like, oh no, it'll be fine. The older brother, and when I say older brother, he was 9. The younger brother was probably 6,
Ish. Yeah.
6, maybe 7. So unfortunately, he drowned. What's interesting enough is that, unlike in WandaVision, where Wanda is basically it's almost like watching a television program, or like you're watching old family videos, but you're in the space, but she couldn't interact with anything. In this one, Steven and Mark could actually kind of interact with everything going on, and it was incredibly interesting with that. Um, we saw Mark deal with his mercenary time, walking into the cafeteria with a room full of dead people because he remembers every single one. That kind of harkens back to Bucky in the Winter Soldier, where he
Mhm.
remembers every single one, and that's kind of a trait I think that is going to keep going through this. I believe even the Punisher mentions about remembering every single one in his series, even though that's not canon to the MCU. It's a character that could very well come back. It is something that Marvel likes to focus on. That look, these people are killers, but the good ones live with that regret for the rest of their lives. They do what they have to do, but they're living with it, and it makes them unstable. It makes them depressed.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. Like, holy shit, this episode, my god, just insane. And then in a weird juxtaposition, Talarat is this incredibly cute and funny
Yeah.
god. Like she's like almost Valley Girl esque in her delivery, but I think with a slight British accent. I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
It felt like it, but not 100%.
Yeah.
Um,
British Valley Girl.
yeah. So she was interesting, but the fact that she was like, even she was willing, because apparently Arthur is being is if this is not all in Mark's head, and this is not in a psych ward, if it is true, which I think that if you're part of any fandom with the MCU, you would have to realize that eventually that has to be the thing. You can't have it all of a sudden just all be in his mind, like an episode of Bob Newhart ending or something, like a series of Bob Newhart ending. Like it can't all be in his mind because that eliminates even the need for from like it feels like a waste of time at that point. So I do feel like it is going to end up being that he is in the field of reeds. He will find a way back, and he has to go against Arthur and Ahmet. Apparently, Arthur's already successful in resurrecting Ahmet because while they're on the ship, a whole bunch of souls just start dropping out of the sky, unchecked, unbalanced. Which in the Egyptian afterlife, you have to have your heart checked for balance. So whether you actually get to go to the field of reeds or if you get stuck in Duet, which is their hell, their underworld.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a purgatory where you're
Yeah,
just frozen in the
yeah.
sand.
Anybody who's ever seen What Dreams May Come, you can kind of get an idea. It's kind of that's like the Catholic version of this.
Yeah.
Great movie, Robin Williams, by the way. You should see it. It's very trippy, it's mind bending, but it's good. Based on a Shakespearean play. But yeah, so like it seems that Arthur has already been successful because now all of a sudden, so instead of being put on the ship like they're supposed to be judged, they're just skyrocketing like comets straight down into the sand. They're being judged before they even die by Ahmet, and so now you can see where not only does Ahmet's version of justice, judging people before they even commit an act, a la Minority Report, is wrong. Like, you know, he talked about the kid murders and stuff. Not only is that wrong, but it also is wrong on the spiritual realm because now it's just overloading the underworld with these unjudged souls because Ahmet has decided to become judge, jury, and executioner versus the way their checks and balances, their way of doing things.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very interesting coming up here. And it's just absolutely insanity. So let's break down Mark Spector's origin a bit. Like we said, we talked about where all the trauma comes from is the loss of his brother. But more so, the loss of his family in a way because his mother loses her mind. And yeah, just fully blames Mark for the death of her Roro. Forgot his Rosser, I believe was his name or something.
Yeah.
So she blames him completely and becomes a full-blown abusive alcoholic. But like you and I talked about, and I'll let you jump on this a little bit more, I find the father to be the true villain of the family. And that was for his lack of doing anything.
Yeah, he knew she had a problem, and he did nothing about it. I mean, by doing nothing, you didn't. I mean, she calls Mark mental anguish due to his mother's mental abuse. Literally getting in his face saying, "This was your fault. He's dead because of you." You know, and then later on, it becomes physical abuse. And like you said, I totally agree with you. It's 100% dad's fault for not trying to get involved and try to get her help. And later on in the episode, we see, Mark at age 9 when the death of his brother happened. Fast forward to Mark's birthday, where she wouldn't even come down to celebrate with him and his dad. And then it jumps forward 2 more years, and where she is down there with him. Mark's dad leaves the room and is like, "I know you were always jealous of him.
Yeah, she says it, did it on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mark gets upset. He throws his party hat down. He stomps up to his room. And then in that moment, when Mark's literally clenched in a corner, holding in his arms in the fetal position, sitting down and saying, "That's not my mom. That's not my mom. That's not my mom." And then, like you said, for lack of a better term, that's when we have the birth of Steven.
Yeah.
Just to switch off, and Mark or Steven has no idea what's happened, has no idea about Mark. He still thinks they have the same mom because during the episode when what's the goddess's name?
Towerette.
Tauret. Thank you. When Tauret says, you know, you can go through these doors and it will show you memories to figure out what you need to do to balance your hearts to be accepted into the field of reeds, into the afterlife, to paradise. So, they have to go back and figure out, how to come together as one, so to speak, so they can both get into the field. And it's just one wild ride.
One thing I
Just,
found, yeah, one thing I found interesting was that throughout this, we've always considered Steven to be this meek, mild-mannered, scared personality. But the reality was, you know, Mark developed the Stephen Grant personality based off the Dr. Stephen Grant from that Tomb Busters, and it's like
mhm,
Dr. Stephen Grant, he fears nothing. And what we find out when Mark and Steven have a bit of an argument, it's like you were created to have no fear of it. Like, so it's like he checks out. So like, even though he's getting beat excessively by his mother with a belt. It's Mark's escape. It's not Steven's escape. Like, Steven is actually there to be the one to take the punishment, to be the stronger one, because
yeah.
Steven is in fact stronger than Mark. And that's what we find out in this episode, which you find fascinating because Mark is he went. So when he left, when he was around 18, he left. He ran, basically kind of ran away. Apparently, he joined the military but went AWOL. And
Yeah.
obviously, somebody in that mental state, with all the abuse he went through, is going to have a problem with authority figures yelling at him. So he went AWOL. That didn't leave him many options, so he became a mercenary with a former CEO, which was name dropped as Bushman.
Mhm.
So that has been laid for a future season if we do get one. Um, but Mark, we see the birth of Moon Knight, or at least this version, this avatar of Khonshu, in this episode as well.
Mhm.
But even like Steven, he did it. Steven immediately sees, because he's watching, as Mark's watching the memory of Khonshu talking to him. He's like, "Oh, he's manipulating you. He's manipulating you. Do you not see that?"
From the whole,
But
from the
Mark,
very beginning.
being the weaker personality, accepts the deal and
Yeah.
becomes Moon Knight. And I think that actually says a lot too about how, yeah, he may seem tough on the outside with his fighting ability
Mhm.
and being a mercenary, but the reality is he is all of that because he is weak. And something that wasn't touched on this episode at all, which was surprising, was the third personality, Jake Lockley.
Yeah. I still can't believe they haven't introduced Jake yet. I mean, yeah, he might not be pertinent to the story right now, but still, I hope we get to see him before, uh,
Yeah, it's weird because
in some way before episode 6.
they teased the shit out of him in episode
Yeah.
3, where he killed those guys, and Steven's like, "How could you do that, Mark?" He's like, "Hey, that wasn't me. That wasn't me." And then
It
we
all
had the
that.
other sarcophagus in last episode, which again, I
Which,
thought when she said she had, my initial thought, and I guess this is to subvert, because everybody probably had this thought, or most people did, when they said they had to balance their hearts and go back. My thought was, oh, it's not balanced because you need that third heart, because that's the complete Mark Spector, is the third personality as well.
yeah.
So I thought they were going back to find that other sarcophagus, and then we had that scene. They're looking at memory, and it looks like Mark's having a drink by a car that kind of looks like a taxi. So my thought was, oh, that's actually, when Mark says, I don't remember that. Oh, it's just a street. It's whatever. he actually was saying that because that's the moment that his mother had died, and he was outside the funeral but refused to go in for Shiva, sorry. Uh, which, by the way, they did represent Moon Knight's Jewish heritage in this episode very well. I appreciated that very much. Representation is obviously very important, and a Jewish character is not something we see very often. So
Mhm.
that was very good. Um, but I thought, oh, that's Jake Lockley. That's why he's not remembering that. That's the third personality. That's him getting ready to go on a shift as a taxi driver. Having a future, because it makes sense to me that Jake Lockley would probably have a couple drinks before actually going to go drive. Like, it wouldn't shock me that he drives tipsy. Like, Jake Lockley's a rough and tumble guy, and he's just kind of
Yeah,
that guy. Like, you just expect that. But as it turns out, that wasn't the case at all, and there was literally zero mention of a third personality, or and even hints to it. So as of right now, we got this massive hint in episode, I want to say 3 was that episode. Yeah,
mhm,
episode 3.
yeah,
We had these massive hints towards a third personality, and yet nothing.
yeah.
So I
It
almost, at this point, like, you can't introduce a third personality in the final episode with everything else that has to go on. So are they saving this third personality? Like, are, because right now Oscar Isaac is not signed up for any more projects with Marvel. Nothing. So are they anticipating him to come back? Are they anticipating that they expect the success to be enough to push him to come back? Because it's weird that they teased it and then nothing. And at this point, how do you introduce a third personality?
it almost makes me think that because obviously in episode 1, Khonshu knew when Mark was in control compared to when Steven was in control because
Yes.
he represents, oh, the idiot's in control. Talking about Steven. So it almost makes me wonder if during March time as Moon Knight, when he's killing all these people that we see in the cafeteria of the uh, psych ward during one of the when they're figuring out how to get the scales to balance. It almost makes me wonder if during one of these times when Mark as Moon Knight created a, the Jake personality during one of those times, and even though Mark doesn't know about Jake, maybe Kongshu does, because if that be true, Jake is obviously more violent than Mark
Yeah,
and probably has no remorse.
yeah.
Definitely
And that
seems like it could be
and to what you're saying, when he talks about, he's like, you remember when Steven asked him, you remember everybody you've killed? He's like, you try taking a life and then
exactly.
see if you can forget. So Conchu, like, could have helped create the third personality in a way, because he could see that Mark was slipping away from him, and so he was already broken. As he talked about, he's like, you're broken. It's fascinating. And the fact that he said it's fascinating, he saw a form of control that he didn't have with any other avatar.
Exactly.
So I think you might be onto something. I just don't know how you introduce that now in the final episode. Unless the
Yeah.
final episode is 2 hours long, which I don't think it is. I believe it is still another 45-minute
Yeah.
episode.
Something like that.
So, like, I don't know how you introduce that, but I think that that makes a lot of sense, because he said Mark remembers everybody he's ever killed, but you notice that the people from episode 3 that he killed were not there.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
They weren't there. And he even said, like, I didn't do it, so he didn't remember. So it
Yeah.
wasn't Mark. And they've been very clear, is that you see it in the credits. There's 3 faces of Oscar Isaac. Like, they've been, like,
Not to bring that up.
there was a third sarcophagus. There is a third personality here. I just don't see how you then introduce it in the 6th episode, when you got to deal with, he's got to get back. He's got to deal with the loss of Steven, because at the end of that episode, Steven ends up in the sand, frozen.
Hmm.
He falls off the boat. And you and I kind of talked about this before the podcast started. I don't think it's going to be the end of Steven, because if it is, it's lazy writing. It's a terrible decision to try to make Mark whole. And it also does a very major discredit to the DID community, who's being representative in one of the few
Exactly.
times they actually get represented. So to just wipe out that character by having him sacrifice himself. And also, like, that type of sacrifice should have been Steven, no, Mark, it's okay. No, he was trying to get back to the, like, he was trying to get back. Like, there was no, like,
Yeah,
it was just all of a sudden. So I think Steven will be back.
yeah.
But, like, I just don't see, I don't know. And I'm not, like, I don't doubt Marvel. Like, Jeremy Slater has been great. The director is awesome. Kevin Feige, I trust implicitly.
Mhm.
So it's just like, if they do introduce it, I'm sure they'll do it in a way that makes sense. I just, at this moment, especially as somebody who is a writer, I don't see it. I don't see how you fit that in to a 45-minute thing where you have to deal with the resurrection of Ahmet. You got to get Khonshu back.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're going to have to deal with the other gods. By the way, we did get another mention of the astral plane, which is the home of Bask, the Black Panther god. So this is the third reference now into that. So that is linking these gods together in a way that, like I said, Marvel is going into a much more spiritual, mystical, and metaphysical area in their movies. And I think that's smart, because the Infinity Saga was all about what unintelligent people consider magic ends up being science. And the Asgardians weren't gods, they were actually aliens, who just had abilities. And so they seemed like gods. The Eternals, kind of the same thing, but like we've got Thor Love and Thunder coming up as well, where we're going to see the Greek pantheon, we're going to see other gods. Um, I also think Thor Love and Thunder is going to answer why we don't have as many gods now as we did before, because Gore the God Butcher.
Yeah.
Um, so that'll be interesting. But I like that Marvel's going this route. But like this episode, like first off, Oscar Isaac is just a sensational actor. He is so good. But man, if this episode was not just intense and
Yeah.
emotional and insane. And like I said, we still don't 100% know if it's actually in his head while he's in the psych ward, or if it's the psych ward was just the what his brain manifested for the afterlife. Because apparently, in the Egyptian afterlife, in what is, for lack of a better term, like you said, purgatory, on the boat, you manifest your own way of dealing with your past to balance your scales.
Yeah. And you want to talk about Oscar Isaac acting in this series so far? Also, got to give it up again for Ethan Hawke. I mean, I just couldn't believe how well he has acted both sides of this character, from the author Harrow that's trying to resurrect Ahmet to Doctor Harrow.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean,
making it very believable. Like part of this is the fact the way Ethan Hawke is acting. You're just like, oh man, is he really a psychiatrist? Like, is he really a doctor? And Oscar Isaac's, Mark Spector has just made him the villain because he's the one trying to,
yeah,
hey, this isn't real. Like he's trying to break down that false reality. So
that, and also the fact that from Arthur Harrow to Doctor Harrow, you can clearly see that Arthur is a conniving cult leader on a mission to resurrect an Egyptian god. But on the flip of that, Dr. Harrow, especially in this episode, he is like you actually feel like he legitimately cares about Mark's mental health.
yeah,
It's like when Mark tries to pick up his crystal pyramid and tries to attack him with it, and Billy and Bobby, who are great references to another reference to the Lemire run, because
yes,
they were the name of the orderlies from that comic. But they were sedating him, and Harold was, he was trying to get them not to hurt Mark. He's like,
huh?
don't hurt him. Do not hurt him. I mean, because any other time you've seen a doctor in a psych ward, they would instantly be like, all right, knock him out,
Yeah.
give him a sedative. But, he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, was there even that moment he talked about? I was like, did you stick a needle in my neck? He's like, oh, you've watched too many videos, too many
Yeah.
movies. We can't sedate anybody without their permission. unless it gets completely out of hand.
Yeah.
But like it was very clinical. It was very like the scene where Steven, like, he finally gets to talk to Steven again. He's talking about, oh, it's been so long. I didn't think I'd ever get to talk to you again.
Yeah.
It's good to hear from you. He's like, but your mother is dead. He's like, no, my mother's not dead. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. There must be a mistake. Like, he very much, he's like, he figured out a way to back up to help the situation. And he's like, let's call your mother. And then Steven, in the realization that, oh no, she is dead. No, 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 you don't have to call her. She screens her call. And then it's literally a dial tone. It's like, here, talk to your mother. And she's like, she's dead. And that was something a doctor would do. That would be something that you would see out of a therapist. So, like, yeah, Ethan Hawke is just also incredible. So, just this series is just absolute insanity in the best possible way.
Yes.
And it is something that, while it's kind of falling into Marvel tropes, it's also incredibly unique in almost every way. It's something very different from Marvel. They've done a very good job with it. And I think that's part of the reason that Marvel does so well, is that Kevin Feige brings in the best people, not the best people in like this person has 10 Academy Awards for directing, or whatever. Not the most acclaimed person. He brings in the best person for the character.
Yes.
Jeremy Slater has treated Moon Knight with such incredibly delicate hands, and has done the character so much justice. And then the director, who I don't even want to attempt to say his name because I'm going to say it completely wrong, but the fact that he is an Egyptian man who has done very well, because he really wanted to see Egyptian culture represented properly and not in the prototypical Hollywood way. They've done a very good job with that.
Yeah, and going back to I keep on forgetting the god's name in this episode.
Telerat.
Talarat. When Steven introduces Talarat, and this, when I watched it for the second time earlier today, there was like, oh, and you put the dots together, but Talarat was the goddess of women and children, and all that, and then you realize that Stephen or Mark being abused as a child, his mother was doing the abusing. It was just like, oh.
Now, there was one scene where I felt like, but also this is again going back to the insanity of the episode. Mark flashes back in the middle of them doing stuff. He flashes back to the office of Dr. Harlow. But now his nose has got a band-aid on it. It's all bloody. His eyes are kind of blackened. Looks like he's been in a fight. Yeah. And Dr. Harlow's like, oh, well, so the introduction of this rhinoceros, and he's like, hippopotamus. He's like, oh, that's right. Like, it was almost condescending that he purposely named the wrong animal. And that was like, that's Arthur. That's not the doctor. Like, that to me felt like Arthur and not the doctor. But in that particular scene, I don't think that was the actual Dr. Harlow in his mind. I think that was another mind trick, because again, he had the brutal nose. This is when they attacked him and they sedated him with a very weird looking liquid, a very movie substance sedative, because it was bright green. So I don't think in that, like, and again, this lends to how great Ethan Hawke is. In that scene, he had to play Harlow pretending to be the doctor versus playing the doctor.
Yeah.
And so we got a different attitude from him in that moment versus the other ones where he genuinely cares about his patient. And so, because the next time we see Mark in that office, the Band-Aid's gone, and he even checks his nose and everything's fine. And it just jumps. It's straight jump cuts, no transition, no nothing. Boom, in the office. Like, in the middle of a scene, boom, he's in the office now.
Yeah, where we got so used to, like, you have these little hints that, you're about to skip something, like Steven's transformation into Mark and back again, where the screen would flash a few times, or Steven would just kind of go out, and then there'd be Mark, or there'd be Steven, whatever. This is just cut from this scene, start this scene, and It was very just like you said, so quick to where you're like, wait a minute, what just happened? We were there, now we're here. So I really felt like Steven when Mark takes over in the first episode. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
where are we now?
And that was the other thing, like, and this is something I thought was interesting because Steven didn't remember the scene on the street, on the memory on the street either. But that was the exact moment where their lives started to bleed together.
Yeah.
Was the death of his mother. That's in America. That's in New York.
Was it New York or was it Chicago? Because
Sorry, it might have been. I'm sorry, Chicago.
Yeah,
that is Chicago.
Because Mark was
he's on Milwaukee Boulevard, like it's in
Yeah.
it's in the suburbs of Chicago. I don't know why I said New York. Sorry.
Or because we're talking about Marvel and
Yeah, Marvel based mainly in New York.
Yeah.
But so Steven calls his mom. Yeah, I'm lost again. I'm trying to find out my bearings. How do you not remember that you just woke up in America? You just woke up in a whole other country. Like, that to me is weird. Like, how do you not, like, oh, it happened again, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. Wait a minute, I'm in America. Like, how does that not register in your head as, like, a big moment? But Steven had almost no recollection whatsoever of that. So I thought that was interesting. So, and I'm also curious, how do you get back? How does Stephen Grant get back to London without a passport, ID, nothing? So that's interesting in and of itself too. So
yeah, plot hole.
But that's more me just nitpicking stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's how my writer's mind works. So I'm looking like, oh, how do you do that? But the fact I think what's more important in that scene is the fact that Steven doesn't remember this. And I thought that was interesting because it's more proof to Steven that Steven is not the number one personality. And but it's also where Steven helps Mark once again. It's not your fault.
Yeah. I mean, do you really think that he didn't remember or was he just trying to shield Steven from seeing this? Because that was the moment that
no,
Steven
because
started.
And the reason I thought that, if you look at how Steven reacted to seeing that moment, he's like, what is it? Like, he was legit surprised. He's like, what is this? He's like, do you remember this? He's like, I don't know. It's just a street. I'm on streets all the time.
I don't know. I think we're going to just chop that one up to agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, I think
Steven's
Steven's reaction.
Steven's
reaction through the window. What I meant
Yeah.
was, like, when they looked through the door, like, Steven genuinely had no idea what was going on there versus Mark's, like, he tried to, like, pass it off, like, oh, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought it was going to be Jake Lockley, because neither one of them really acknowledged the scene. But
yeah, that was also what I wanted. I really wanted to them pass by a door where they saw when those three thugs got killed in episode 3. That's what I was really wanting to see, when they start walking by these doors and seeing these memories.
Yeah.
But yeah, all we got to see was Moon Knight beating the Jackal in the bathroom in episode 1. And then Steven and Kung Shu turning back time in episode 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the end of episode 3.
And then got to this memory of them being on the street where Mark is standing outside of his parents' home.
Yeah, it's just it's again, I don't know how you introduce this third personality that has been teased without making the episode longer. So I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I'll just say right now, if they don't introduce him during the main part of episode 6, then we might see him in an end credit scene if they give us one, because we haven't gotten an end credit scene for Moon Knight yet.
Yeah, that's true. Normally you'd have one in episode 5, but we didn't get one.
Yeah.
And that could be part of it. It could be that, Steven comes back, because like I said, I do believe Steven will be back. But they have developed a partnership within themselves to better help each other. And Steven is going to, I think, maybe be regulated to almost like a more like a Jiminy Cricket consciousness kind of personality. and not like he'll accept that he is not the main personality, and he'll be more like, I'm here to help you, Mark. So I
Yeah.
think that he'll, maybe that, but then maybe in a post credit scene we see, maybe some thugs or something trying to get at Mark, and then Mark comes to and they're all dead around, and then you see a reflection, and that's Jake Lockley's personality, and maybe we get like a Brooklyn accent or something, and or like some kind of heavy accent, like a
Yeah.
heavy, like rough American accent that like he's like, you and Steven both can't protect yourselves. That's what I'm here for.
Right.
Who really needs to get their hands dirty. That's what I'm here, or something like that. So that
Yeah.
could happen, but I think that only happens if Marvel is certain that they can bring Oscar Isaac back. And like I said, as of right now, as far as I know, he is not signed on for anything else. Which I'll actually double check that real quick.
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, I've been looking forward to Moon Knight since they announced it
Yeah, me too.
because I've been such a fan, and just recently reading the Lemire run where it does dive more into his DID, and it's just phenomenal how deep this character goes and how few people really know about him unless you're a diehard fan like we have been. But I think to dismiss the Jake Lockley persona would definitely be an injustice if they didn't try to give a good hint that he is coming in.
Yeah.
And plus, that would be a really great cliffhanger to end the series on. So naturally, I think that would make fans want, it's like, please, Oscar, come back. We need more of this to see where this story takes us and this new personality that's come up that we're finally getting to see. So I really hope that if we don't see him in the episode, at least give us an end credit scene where it kind of introduces him a little bit better.
Yeah.
And also, I'm really surprised. Well, not really surprised, but like we were talking about a few weeks ago, um, where we thought that maybe Blade or Black Knight would make an
Yeah, yeah,
appearance
yeah.
in
That was
this. We
something.
haven't got any of that, which I'm actually really okay with.
Yeah, I'm actually like now at this point, I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. And I had also still thought, like originally had thought, before this episode, like, oh, if we get a episode 6 post credit scene, maybe it'll be a hit towards Midnight Suns. But
Yeah.
also, I think that you avoid that in this particular case because Marvel has, like I said, Oscar Isaac only signed on just for this. So you didn't know if you'd have more Moon Knight after it. Now, as of right now, at least, the latest interview with Variety, he made it very clear that he was only signed on for this project, but he does say that it depends on how people take to this show on whether he'll come back. He's like, the future is open. It depends on if people like the series or not. Which I have to say, I do believe, as far as I can tell, that most people do enjoy this series, and it's
Mm,
been very, very, very popular. So hopefully that's enough to bring him back.
yeah.
But it's going to be a long time because by not having anything in the books now, he's already got other projects in the works. So it's going to be a little weird to see. But also, you don't necessarily have to do a second. It does depend too on the Jake Lockley situation because
Mhm.
again, you've hinted at another personality, so you kind of have to pay that off somehow. So depending on what happens in his final episode, if they do a good enough wrap up that he doesn't need another full 6 episodes of something, you can bring him in as almost a cameo type character, or well, let's say supporting actor character, a supporting
Yeah.
role in other movies or other series. So he only has to come in for a few days of shooting versus locking down an entire thing.
Yeah. And that also would kind of tie in with his early days in the comics, because he was only in two comics of Werewolf by Night when he was first debuted. Then there was a few years that went by until he got into the Marvel Spotlights where he teamed up with another character. and that went on for a while, for like a year, maybe two, and then he finally got his own series in 1980, I believe.
80, I believe. Yeah, 80 or 81. I think it was 80.
Yeah. So, what's it? Werewolf by Night came out in
70,
73 or
74,
74, 75, something like that.
something like that.
So that was
Mid
5 years.
70s.
Yeah, mid 70s. So, that was 5 years that we got to introduce this character, and then he just teamed up with the superhero of the month for a while until he got his own series. So I think that would be a good thing to do, just to say, oh, look, there he is in
Well, plus we
an
have,
upcoming
yeah,
project.
we have a Werewolf by Night series coming.
Yeah.
We have Blade. We have a lot of things teed towards a MCU version of the Midnight Suns. So you could bring him back later on. And again, it all comes down to like how they wrap up this third personality is really sticking out to me because it was teased so hard in episode 3.
hmm You,
And
you think that was done on purpose because episode 3, third personality?
maybe, but like to not get a payoff on that would feel really horrible.
Yeah, it would.
Because
I
you
mean,
also teased it in episode 4 with the third sarcophagus, which, funny enough, they didn't even see this time around when they went back in.
yeah,
So, I don't know. Like, it was teased a lot in 3 and 4. And really teased, not like, oh, this is it's just
yeah,
like,
subtle in the background.
yeah, it's very subtle background, almost a throwaway line of that wasn't me,
Yeah,
to Mark to Steven. So that's enough. That's a true tease. And again, the third sarcophagus, true tease. And anybody who knows anything about Moon Knight, like to the casual fan, they might be able to ignore that. But even then, I don't think so. Because now you're like, okay, wait a minute. He said that wasn't him. Like that's got to play on you. You already know this guy has split personality.
yep,
That's got to play on you, even as a fan who had no idea. Because I know, like in Denise's case, perfect example, completely unaware of the character before this series.
hmm
She has asked me about this third personality because she has noticed that tease. So like, and then you have the diehard fans, or even the middle of the road fans who know about Moon Knight and know about his DID and know about Jake Lockley. So it feels like it. I don't know if it was meant to be maybe an Easter egg instead of a tease, and it backfired on them. But the fact they did it in 2 episodes to me says tease, not Easter egg.
yeah. Because the difference was like when we found Steven in that sarcophagus in episode 4, you know, you could hear him banging on the lid of the sarcophagus. You heard him screaming, let me out. I'm in here. Let me out. And then when Stephen or Mark gets him out, they hug and then they're going to Sloran. The third sarcophagus is standing upright
Yeah,
and it's shaking violently.
yeah.
So, and it also makes me think they've kind of done almost like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of build on these 3 characters where Stephen is the lawful good and Mark would be I can't remember the term, but he's the neutral.
Would he be lawful neutral or chaotic neutral? Or would he be chaotic good? Because he is still fairly violent and aggressive. But he is very kind of
Maybe chaotic neutral.
maybe chaotic neutral, or maybe lawful neutral, just because he does still try to stay within the only he's trying to avenge the people that need to be avenged. Like he's trying to like.
That makes a good point
Maybe
because
that he's kind of a little bit harder to place, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, because and Jake
and
Lockley
then
just straight up murder like those guys. Like because Mark
yeah,
never would have killed those guys. Like
he's
Mark,
chaotic.
he's
Chaotic evil almost. Well, from what we can tell,
okay. I think the best way to put it is I would put Steven as lawful good. Mark's either going to be lawful neutral or chaotic good. I have to put Jake Lockley at chaotic neutral.
Yeah,
Because he is obviously chaotic and he blurs that line between good and evil. I don't put him at chaotic evil because he's still killing these people who are attacking him. He's not killing them completely out of
That's
cold blood,
yeah, that's fair to
but
say.
his initial reaction is to just kill them, not disarm them, take them out. It's okay, they're attacking me. I'm gonna cut their head off. Like I'm just gonna kill them.
Right.
So
And
whereas
you had that, and we had that moment in episode 3
yeah,
where
he like got that blade. Like Mark comes to, and the blade is like deep in the guy. He's like, what the hell?
well, even before that, when Steve Mark had the youngest one with the Roman Tet
Mm-hmm.
crown on his jacket, where he had his closed fist, and then he thought about it for a second, and then he opens it and slaps it.
Yeah. So that's why he falls more like maybe lawful neutral
Awful
or
neutral.
chaotic good.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning more towards lawful neutral the more we talk about it. Being that he's willing to get his hands dirty and he is willing to kill if necessary, but he does have a moral compass with
Yeah.
it. Whereas Jake Lockley just feels like, oh, you did me wrong, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not killing you because you're walking down the street and I don't like the way you look, but I will kill you if you do me wrong. So
Right.
that's why I find him as more of a chaotic neutral. And and I think that when Lemire did the series, it wasn't like I understood he already had the background of these three personalities in the sense that Mark had three personas to get information. He
Yeah.
had the Stephen Grant movie producer to deal with his finances and to kind of get his story out there. He had Mark Spector, the mercenary, who was Moon Knight, and then he had Jake Lockley, the ground level taxi driver, to get information.
Yeah.
And these weren't personalities; these were just personas, like how Bruce Wayne does the same thing. Because Bruce Wayne has a taxi driver kind of like persona where he puts on a fake nose and he talks in a gruff voice and doesn't shave and whatever to get some low. And then he has like the Bruce Wayne billionaire, but also deals in some shady circles to get information from white collar criminal kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then he has Batman. But Lemire decided to step away from that Bruce Wayne Batman comparison and make them full on personalities and part of his personality disorder. And what we find out in the Lemire run is that it is all in his head, the psych ward.
Yeah.
But part of that was due to a villain. In this one, it's the afterlife, or is it? You know, like we really don't know. And so,
yeah, the lines are blurred so well in this episode that you, even as a hardcore fan, I don't think they could even tell you which was which.
Yeah, it's just like it's absolutely insane. So I think that I don't even want to predict what's going to happen in episode 6.
No,
because I just can't. I just can't, and I love it. I love that I can't even come up with a theory. I can't even come up with a theory. The best I can do is that from the field of reeds, Mark finds a way back to his body to stop Arthur. And I think that's kind of obvious. But man, oh man, I just have no idea what's going to happen next.
So it'll also be interesting to see, you know, now that he is in the fields of reeds and he reached the gates of Osiris to get back to the land of the living. Even Teferet said that, well, you can go back, but you're going to go back to a body with bullet holes in it.
Yeah, no, you know, because Khonshu's still locked up.
Yeah.
So, and I did see something about that Talaret might, like, there was after episode 4, there was some theories that she was part of that pantheon on the wall where Khonshu's statue was put. But the fact that she's active and controlling the boat in the afterlife tells me that she's free. So I don't believe that to be true. But she's also very aware that he was, you know, locked away, and so that you go back, you won't have Khonshu's protection or healing.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. It could be up to Layla to get the statue of Khonshu, to free Khonshu, to resurrect
Mark.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in this next episode. It's going to be crazy. So as we wrap up here, Kel, looking forward to next week. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
A lot to wrap up on, and we will also take a look back at the series as a whole next week. So thank everybody for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch. Please hit that follow button, and if you could subscribe, it helps the channel out greatly, helps us grow. A lot more things coming down the pipeline as soon as some current personal situations get handled. So we got that taken care of. So looking forward to it, and we will see everybody next week.